Okay, here we go. Once again, if you don't know who I am, Rosanna Berardi from Berardi Immigration Law. I'm the managing partner here. We're a business immigration law firm based in Buffalo, New York. This is year 20 of the firm, hard to believe. And what we do is we help people get their work permits, green cards, and US citizenship. So why am I having these town halls? Well, I will tell you, immigration is on the front page of every newspaper, every story that you can think of. And there is a ton of misinformation. I'm not picking on the New York Times, but the New York Times had an article last week that had the wrong concepts, the wrong terminology. And we're going to see come Monday, January 20th, which is the inauguration day, we're going to see a lot of action on US immigration. And my goal today is to give you a quick and dirty 101. How does it work? So you can really understand what's going on and what some of the issues are really about. Trust me, the sound bites are incorrect. There's a reason for all of this, and I'll tell you what it is. So how does this all work? Well, we are mandated by a body of law called the Immigration and Nationality Act. It's been amended a few times, 1952, and most recently, 1996. Yes, I said 1996. Many, many moons ago, the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act, which contains the law, has not been changed in almost 30 years. So people say to me all the time, how do you keep up with the law, with the administration, blah, blah, blah. It's really not the law that changes. It's policy directives and executive orders, which I'll speak more to that shortly. So we have this U.S. immigration law. How is our system designed? Can someone from Canada just cross the border and start working here? The answer is no. Canadians think they have a free hall pass to come to the US and just start working. Canadians, like every other country around the world, can only come to the United States if they are sponsored. We have two types of sponsorship. We have family-based and we have employment-based. So I'm sure you've all seen the green card movies. The family-based sponsorship is when you have a US citizen that's in the United States, and they want to sponsor you either through marriage or family relationships. So we call these cases in our office marriage-based green cards. And basically, Match.com has revolutionized immigration law, because if you're sitting in Buffalo, New York, and you say, I want to date somebody 30 miles radius, that's going to put you into Canada. So we have a lot of cross-border couples. Somebody will live in Buffalo and be engaged to somebody in St. Catharines. They just can't come in. There is an entire lengthy, expensive process to sponsor somebody for this type of green card. Also, if you're a US citizen and you have parents that are abroad, you can sponsor your parents to come into the United States. What's important to know right now, and it's been this way since the sands of time, is we have something called the Visa Bulletin. And really, it's a list. And it basically lists your place in line versus how the government lets people into the country. So the government prioritizes family relationships. You can always bring in your mother or father, unrestricted amounts of green cards for them. For marriage-based cases, it depends. There are visa numbers usually available, but then as the relationship dilutes, if you want to bring a sibling in, let's say I'm a US citizen and I want to sponsor my brother who's in Spain. Guess what? That is not a priority sponsorship for US immigration. And even though we can do all the paperwork and we can get it approved, my brother would have to stand in a line and would probably have to wait 10 years. No joke here. It goes by family relationship as well as countries. Countries that are oversubscribed, meaning lots and lots of their individuals are in the US, like China or India or the Philippines. They have lengthy waits for their turn for green cards. So that's family immigration in a nutshell. Okay, so you can't just, bring in all your family. There's a lot of talk and a lot of rhetoric about this type of immigration. If done legally, it is incredibly lengthy, expensive, and very, very time consuming. So we have family immigration. We've always had this under the US immigration law. This has not changed in 50 plus years. Now, we have another way of coming to the US. Again, we're sponsorship. You can't just walk in. You can't just say, oh, I'm here, I want to start working. Doesn't work like that. Employment-based immigration is immigration in which an employer says, hey, Joe Smith from Canada, how would you like to work as an accountant at Ernst & Young? Ernst & Young then retains a firm like mine. They are not a client, just an example. And what we do is we look under the Immigration and Nationality Act and say, how can accountants come to the United States? And lo and behold, under the Immigration and Nationality Act, there's a category for Canadians, specifically under NAFTA, or which is now known as the USMCA. Everybody still calls it NAFTA. That Canadian, as long as he or she works in one of the occupations on that list, can work in the US. Now, I don't want to get in the weeds on this, but I want you to know that there's employment-based immigration. And there's probably about 10 categories that we utilize each and every day. This firm is 20 years old. We use these old rotten categories, that haven't been updated since 1997 to bring people in lawfully. It is hard. It is expensive. Trust me when I tell you, no employer would want to do this if they didn't have to. There's a ton of rhetoric. There was a huge debate on Twitter or X a few weekends ago about the H-1B visa. And Elon Musk said, American wouldn't be who they are today without this H-1B visa. That's a visa classification, employment-based, requires a bachelor's degree. We have many, many high-level thinkers coming into the U.S. on the H-1B category. So there's many, many ways of coming in through employment, both temporarily and permanently for green cards. Why do we need this? People say to me all the time, oh, this is garbage. We have 330 million Americans. Why on earth do we need all these people here? Well, there's a few reasons why. And one is quite alarming and is not in the media today. The New York Times is starting to talk about it, so we'll see if this takes off. The United States population is shrinking incredibly fast. People are not having babies. They're not having families of 5. What does that mean? Well, to you and I day to day, that doesn't mean anything. It is going to have a huge impact on services and labor in the United States. For example, the Congressional Budget Office came out today and said, usually our population grows 10% year to year. For the next 3 years, they're saying it's only going to grow 6.5%. That's huge in a country of 330 million people. Now, again, hard to realize the impact of this, but this has happened in Japan already, where they've had a shrinking population. And what's happening is they don't have enough people to do the services that are required for day-to-day living, like banking, mail delivery. They only have mail delivery 3 days a week in Japan because they just don't have enough people. So the U.S. immigration law has been around for a long time to fill gaps. And I know. People say to me all the time, this is ridiculous. In a country of our size, we shouldn't have these gaps. Well, we shouldn't have a lot of things, but we do, particularly with a shrinking population and shortage occupations in agriculture, in medicine, in tech. There are massive gaps. We do a lot of physician immigration. It is impossible for hospitals and healthcare systems to find enough nurses and doctors to fulfill their hiring needs. If you've been in an emergency room or any hospital as of late, they are all short-staffed. There's simply not enough Americans getting their degrees in healthcare industry in order to fulfill the hiring needs. So foreign labor plays a huge gap. And I know people say, oh, it's a way of getting cheap labor, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to go into the weeds of why that's not true, but regulatory, if I had to hire a foreign national lawyer, I am required under law to pay them a prevailing wage for whatever lawyers make in the Western New York region. This is mandated by salary surveys, the Department of Labor. Trust me when I tell you that most companies that hire foreign workers are not doing it for cheap labor. They are doing it simply because they can't find Americans. Now, are there bad actors? Yes. There are companies that do utilize these categories in a way that they were not intended. However, that's the minority. I have represented thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people at this point in the 28 years that I've been doing this that have waited their turn patiently, been sponsored by employers or family, and live and work in the United States. We have a system. We have a law. The law is a little bit garbagey at this point because it has not grown with the economy, the types of jobs that exist today. Software developers didn't exist when the law was written. The advent of AI is huge. And why hasn't the law been updated? Well, remember Schoolhouse Rock, and remember in 5th grade when you learned who makes the law. It is not the president, people. Stop talking about President Trump and how he's going to change the law. Only Congress can change the law. And what has Congress done year after year after year? Absolutely nothing when it comes to immigration. Why? I have a personal theory. No politician wants to say we need more foreigners in America. It is not a popular sentiment, particularly in the last decade where immigration has really been trounced by politicians as those people coming in, creating crimes, acting as terrorists, doing bad things. Well, contrary to that, we have our whole host of bad actors in the United States as well. I'm not saying it justifies it or it's right, but the anti-immigrant sentiment is growing and growing and growing. And really, we need foreign labor, foreign workers in the United States to keep things going as they are. So what's going to happen next? Well, President Trump met with some senior Republican leaders last week. It was leaked. They were talking about 100 executive orders. Now, don't get me started on executive orders. 100 executive orders are going to come out. That is literally the president acting as a dictator and saying, we're changing this. All the presidents do it. Obama loved executive orders. Biden does it. And in my lifetime, executive orders used to be rare. And they've just grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. And now it's kind of the course of business, which to me is very disturbing for a US democracy because we have 3 levels of the government and the president should not be changing law. Be that as it may, we're going to see some executive orders next week. And if you tune in tomorrow, I'm going to tell you about 3 or 4 that I think are actually going to happen. Now, remember, the executive orders, they always wind up litigated. Why? Because the president usually doesn't have the power that he or she wants in order to change the law. But we're going to see this. And now you have a thumbnail sketch of how this all works. We're sponsorship based. The law is old. It doesn't take into account our economy, doesn't take into account our occupations, our workforce. We need foreign labor in order to fill in gaps. The US population is shrinking. We let hundreds of thousands of foreign students into the US every year at universities and colleges, charge them a small fortune, and then tell them to go away. It doesn't make sense. The system is broken. Comprehensive immigration reform has always been on my Christmas list. I haven't seen it in 28 years, and I doubt we're going to see anything comprehensive, maybe some dribs and drabs, but that's how it all works. And if you tune in tomorrow at noon, again, bite-sized, big picture, but there are some interesting executive orders that I think are going to happen as early as next week. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, please reach out to us on any of our social media platforms. Follow us on social. We are all over the place right now. LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.